Hey y'all, it's Sarah. I am doing a little crafting today. So I've got a bunch of stuff sitting here. I'm really excited to get crafting, so I'm going to skip most of the intro and just kind of dive right in. I have got, obviously, my handy dandy Readi-board. If you don't know what this is, guys, this is that poster board stuff you find next to the poster board in office supply and school supply areas. You can see it's a little bit thicker. It's got kind of this foam core center. These come in 20 by 30 sheet. You can find it in most of your retailers like Wal-mart, Dollar Tree, Dollar General. Any of those, it ranges from $1 a sheet or less. Wal-mart typically carries theirs for 88 cents. However, mine never has it there. So I usually do Dollar Tree. I've got some of it cut already down into my 3" by 30" strips. If you're wondering why I do those measurements, reason number one, I do 3 inches because that's the width of my ruler that I like to use. And the reason I do 30 inches is because they are manufactured in that direction. And when you look at a board, a full sheet, sometimes you can see the ripples in it. And those ripples, when you cut them across them, you end up getting the jagged edges rather than these really clean edges. So when you cut it at the 30" length, it's almost cutting it with the grain that it's manufactured in. So you get a much nicer, cleaner cut. So I've got some of those. I've got some greenery that I'm going to be using. I've got something to make a circle with. I'm using one that's roughly about 12 inches around. You can go whatever size you want to. I want to get pretty big with this. I've got some paints here. This one has a paint technique in it, or a paint color in it. If you're not familiar with the regular wood videos, those are their own entity on my channel just because they take more time to show the detail. I'm going to try to do a quick version of this in this pumpkin orange chalk paint by Waverly and the Waverly wax and antique. I prefer chalk paint, guys. I'm always going to say I prefer chalk paint just because I'm less likely to get the moisture issues than I would with acrylic or something like that. Acrylic just takes a lot more paint to get the same level of pigments. It tends to be a little more watery. It's more likely to make my little strips warp when I paint them. So that's my preference. You do you. Let's get started. I'm kind of excited about this one. So I want to do a couple of things first. I want to go ahead and start getting some strips painted. And I'm not entirely sure how many I'm going to need, so I'm just going to do several. And unfortunately, I got a stack of foam core that was already bowed and warped as all get out. So I'm trying to use those up. Hopefully this is a good project for that. You can kind of see every single one of them. The whole sheet came really bowed up. Even when I cut them down and tried to stack them in a way to straighten them out, they're still kind of bowed up. But we're going to be gluing this down to a backer piece that we draw out. So now's a good time to use any kind of weird ones that you may have. So first things first, if you haven't seen the wood tutorials, I'm going to come in. Now this one's going to look like a mess when I'm doing it because I don't have my little pieces glued to the side of my desk like I usually do when I'm doing this many pieces. So y'all don't make fun of me for slinging these all over the place. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm working on knot holes. I'm not going to put a ton in this. When you start putting too many, it can start looking busy. But what I'm doing is I am taking my fingernails, which are fairly thick since they're gel, and I am breaking that surface first and then curving around. Now, the thickness of my nail really helps with this. That curved shape, that really kind of gives some depth and dimension to your knot holes. I'm randomly putting them in, no big deal. You can take something pokey and do a few wormholes if you want to. I'm not going to go real major with this because we're not actually even doing this in a particular wood tone. One other thing you can do is sometimes boards have gouges, and especially when you're recycling barn wood and things like that, taking a little plastic thing and just kind of breaking that surface a little bit. I don't want to go too far. I don't want to make these things come apart on me. So here's where I'm at now. Maybe you guys can see. Ta-da. Now, let me grab some gloves, and we're going to start on the orange part. Okay, guys, one other thing that I forgot to mention that obviously we'll need is the Waverly wax in clear. This is my preference to use. People ask about the white wax. That has actual pigment in it. This is clear, even though it looks white, it has pigment in it. The white one, or this one doesn't have pigment. The white one does have pigment in it, and it can alter your colors. So this is what we're using as our medium. It's going to help us achieve some of our wood grain look with the orange. And if you're not familiar with Waverly's pumpkin color, this orange color, y'all, this stuff is so bright. And when I went to open this bottle, it kind of exploded on me. And you can see, even against these pink gloves, that stuff is super bright. We're going to tone it down quite a bit, though. So we're going to use this later. We want the orange to dry first because we don't want our colors to blend. So I'm going to do this in a couple stages. I'm doing it in the same stage that I would suggest you do it in. You know, rather than try to hurry it along, I'm going to try to show you in the stage that I would recommend doing it in, because you do want a little dry time between the orange layer and the antique layer. And that just helps let those colors be individual colors rather than blending those colors together. So I'm coming in with my Dollar Tree bath sponge, half my Dollar Tree bath sponge. I'm going to be using this with a little bit of the orange and some of this clear. You can see there's orange and clear there. Why is the wax necessary? One, it works as a medium to help us get the dimension of light there that allows it to look like graining. Secondly, it almost helps protect this paper surface so that our wet materials, like our paints, don't sink through as bad and hit the adhesive that glues this paper surface to the foam and cause it to release and peel on you. So I'm going to come in. I usually don't like doing this with this sponge because these edges are sharp. And I am not doing much of it, guys, because I'm going to come back in with that antique color and do those edges. But just to show you that that's typically what we do. That's typically what we do. So I'm going to come in with this. And I'm going, you can see, this is some serious bright orange. I am going to start applying some of this. And I'm using my fingers to put pressure down so that I get some gradient here. I'm pinching it together so that I get a little bit different gradient here. This sponge ultimately becomes a tool. You can see I have not even shot for full coverage. I'm going to do a couple different orange tones on this so that you guys can kind of see. It may end up making my carrot look a little bizarre, but I want you to be able to see exactly how far you can take this. I'll do some of these that are really light coverage of this orange like this, and then I'll do some that are a heavier coverage of this orange, and then we'll do the next step, and you can kind of see the different color tones it gets from the same exact color, just varying the depth that we kind of apply that color. You can see there's a difference there in those. I'm going to move on, do these other few. You see how fast that goes along with this one. But like I said, this is a two-step process for this color that I'm working on. If you want to just do this orange, by all means, go for it. But it is bright. I love it. It's a happy orange. It's a very happy orange. But I tend to have a little softer, more muted colors. I'm still using this mix that has the clear in it. And I'm just going to go across here, do the same thing. Let me see if I can get one of these pretty dark. And for the most part, I'm using the paint to get some color pigment, but most of what I'm working with is my clear. I get asked that a lot. The paints I use basically add your color to it. And it's the wax paints that help us get these interesting textures with that little bit of white, light green look showing through. You notice that I did not focus on my knot holes on this part because I want those to show up a little darker with my antiquing. So this is where we are with the orange pieces. That's all we've got to do. That step's pretty painless, very quick. I can come in real quick and whip across these. No big deal because, like I said, this part's going to get covered with more of the antique. But it does help clean my sponge off a little bit. So we're going to set these to the side. Try to make sure that you're not making an entire mess when you stack them. I do tend to do that. But we're going to set these to the side, let them dry while we go ahead and start this other part of the process. And then they should be dry enough by the time we're done with that, that we can go ahead and do that second coating of the antique. Okay, now that I've got the orange madness cleaned off my desk, I have got my full sheet of foam core. I've got my round template, whatever it is you want to trace out. Got another one here to the side that I may actually use to help round out the base of my little carrot. But I am going to go ahead and come in and somewhere at the top here, I'm going to start my bigger circle. And look, I'm just using I am not even using a ruler. I'm using a piece of foam core to do this with. I am just kind of eyeballing the center of what this is. My little thing here, my little template, really helps me just for the fact that it shows where the center is. So I kind of know where that center point is now down here. Take this little round thing. Something round and smaller. And that one actually may be too large. But I can sit and play with that as I get to the main part, which is coming down off my carrot. With a straight line. And I want to come across over here just a little bit. Kind of marking right there. So I know that that's where I started on this side also. I think on a look like this, there is no, unless you're a just true perfectionist, and I do tend to be with a lot of things, but there are certain times where on this, guys, I don't know that I would strive for perfection with a project like this. The more rustic it looks, the less perfect it looks. I think the better off you end up being. So I was right. I came down to about here. I don't know how well you guys can see that. My little circle, my last little template that I chose, honestly was a little large. I'm going to grab, I've just got a Dollar Tree spackling can. That looks a little closer to size. So the cool thing about doing this is that you can turn around, depending on what circle you use and how you line it up. If I had shifted this a little bit, I would have been able to get two out of one sheet. I didn't do that. I meant to show you guys to kind of lean your bottom of your carrot over as you drew it so that you would be able to squeeze both on here, but you could. I'm only going to be doing one for this tutorial anyway, so we're still good. Your next step is just going to be to go ahead and cut this fella out. Those of you that are used to hanging out with me, you know that I prefer just a straight razor blade. I am bringing out my big bad boy ruler here, and I'm going to use it as my straight edge for this straighter part of my carrot. And just get it aligned and whip through it. Now, I get questions all the time about better cutting. One of the things I want you to kind of notice here is that I have these little blue dots randomly stuck here on this wide ruler. What that is just some of the Dollar Tree poster tack is where I grabbed this one. And I've got it stuck on the back side of that ruler. So if you notice, that ruler does not slide around on me when I go to cut. It stays secure to my piece. so I don't have it sliding, and it helps me stay really close up against this blade since nothing is, or up against this straight edge since nothing is shifting on me. That's part of how I get such really nice clean cuts. I know there are people that still struggle with that. That's one of my little secrets. So I'm going to start up here before my foam core. I'm not going to start directly on my foam core. I get the best cuts when I start above it and get that pressure started. So I've whipped through that part pretty easy. I did get a little crooked here, but you guys, I am reaching as far across my desk. This sheet is 30 inches long, and I can assure you my arms are not 30 inches long. As a matter of fact, these sheets of foam core are 30 inches long. My legs are only 27 inches long. So that'll tell you, my arms can't hardly reach. So if I'm looking funny while I'm cutting this, y'all try not to judge me. I'm cutting at this full length all weird. Normally, I would bring it closer to the edge of my desk where I could lean over to it a little better. But if I do that, you can't see what I'm doing. According to pretty much everyone. So, same thing. I've gotten it secured down. And right now, I'm just doing the straight cuts. I can come back in and do across the circular part here in just a moment. And you can see, I just wanted to get this thing a little easier for me to maneuver. So, doing the curved part, honestly, I almost feel like it's easier than the straight lines sometimes. You can see I pretty much am just following that line that I cut. There we go. Beautiful cut there. We'll do the same thing here at the bottom. You don't have to. You could leave this thing flat if you wanted to. Mine, I'm not going to put a stand on this. You could totally put a stand on this. I actually was thinking that I wanted to tuck these into my little baskets or my big baskets that I keep blankets and pillows my living room in. So it wouldn't matter if I did this end nice and neat or not. And we're actually going to cover this entire piece also. So here you go. This is a stage, if you don't want to do the greenery like I plan on doing, now's a good time you can use this other piece to create yourself some kind of greenery stalk using the foam core also. I don't plan on doing that. I wanted to use some pretty greenery and maybe some ribbon. I don't know what all I'm going to pull out on that just yet. I know that I kind of have to add details to things. So that's what I'll be doing. I'm going to put all this away and I'm going to come back with my orange pieces. Okie dokie, guys. I am back with my orange pieces. I've got some of my Waverly wax in the color Antique here. Got my bath sponge. So now is a good time. It's a good time to go ahead and hit those edges. So I am using just my junky sponge here, my Dollar Tree kitchen sponge, the Scrub Buddy ones that are 6 in a pack. I prefer these, honestly, doing my edges because the edges are sharp and they tear up my nicer textured sponges. And I really am not working towards any perfect coverage like you'd want on a finished faux wood piece. We mostly just want to tone down these sides a little. And I'm not even going to worry about the ends because we're going to be cutting these down anyhow. So a little bit to tone these down. Nothing drastic, nothing major. Let's see if I can hurry up and move through these without this part setting. So I'm coming in now with my bath sponge part. I am not going in with heavy paint on this because if you go in too heavy with the antique on this now, it's honestly going to cover most of your orange color. So I am barely putting pressure on this. Can we see where that's going? I do want to get down in my little distressed spots, my little aged spots. Down here in this one. And I'm doing those, if you notice, typically I do those right as I get started. I'll go through and pop a little paint into those. I'm doing on this one as I go, simply to keep it from staining too dark around those areas before I get it blended. So you can kind of see, now we're getting in this distressed orange kind of wood look. Keep going. Make sure I get it down in the knot holes here. We're going to go ahead and blend this out some. This board was darker, so I can go a little heavier on my antique. But like I said, I wanted to make mine, I wanted to show you how just the application can change the color tones you get out of this. So you can kind of see what's going on here. This one's really orange. It's much darker. I'm going to tap some paint into those. Slightly blend that. Blend out any fingerprints that I might have, since I don't have my little thing here that I usually hook these in between. Once again, I'm not even achieving full coverage here. You can see there's different tones there because some spots I'm hitting with this antique, honestly, a little more than others. And I'm kind of skipping around, dragging that across. I'm going to go in and tap into this knot hole here. Drag that out a little bit, soften the look. And you can see how fast this goes, swapping out colors. Now, I will say not all colors are created equal. Sometimes you can pretty much, I don't know if you've seen, some of the videos I have on the Peppermint Cactus Facebook group have some of the ulterior or the alternative colors and color schemes of wood. Other than just wood, so to speak. You know, things like this, the orange, the teals, those kind of things. But not all are created equal, because sometimes whatever that underlying color is, the antiquing can really alter it to the point where you no longer recognize what the underlying color is. If you go too heavy with it, if you go too crazy with it, it can really distort what your final color becomes, or it can really enhance it. If you use something like the Agave chalk paint by Waverly as your base, it almost creates an entirely different color with that one, and it's gorgeous. So it's hit or miss. Some of your paler colors, yellows, pinks, the softer versions of those colors, a little bit harder to manage this, but pretty much most of your color schemes can be done this way. So now we have some orange boards, basically. I do want to come in and hit these knot holes that I missed. Is that everybody? I think that's everybody. So now we're ready to kind of start gluing these guys down. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, because obviously you're going to be able to get several layers out of one of these, I'm just going to cheat here a little bit. And I'm not entirely cutting them as I go, but I'm cutting them as I go, if that makes any sense. I'm going to mark this one so I can make sure to get it just wide enough. I'm not even cutting this great and fabulous with a straight edge because I'm going to be trimming it out later. And now you see what I mean. We're going to be able to go up fairly decent. with pretty much just a couple of strips. Now, one of the things that you want to watch for as you're applying is you want to make sure that you're starting to apply, well, honestly, it'd still be kind of cute. You do you. I was going to say, you want to make sure that you're kind of lining them up nicely where they're not running cattywampus and crooked here, but I think that actually could be pretty cute. So if you want to try it that way, totally try it that way. Show us how it looks. So I'm going to get a good portion of the way up with just one strip. And there we go. Not halfway up, but I got a pretty good ways up. I'll go ahead and bring in this one. It's got 2 knot holes on it, so I get a little bit of design variance out of this guy. And you could have pre-measured these if you wanted to, but honestly, on the shaped pieces like this, I really find it easier to get everything glued in place rather than cutting and measuring and cutting and measuring and stopping every single time with straight up accurate measurements. It's easier to do it like this to me and then turn around and trim all those edges down nicely. Let's see. Am I going to get my knot holes on this one? I want to get my knot holes on this one. Let me drag another piece in so that I can do that one, and then I get my double knot holes. There we go. Now I'm more likely to actually get both of my knot holes on this piece. And you can kind of see where this is going, guys. It's no big surprise, I think, once I told you what we were making with it. How that was gonna lay out. If you've seen me do many of the other I love the shaped projects, by the way. If I didn't mention that, I really do. That's why I probably sound a little fast and hyper, is I really do, for some reason, just get so tickled with the shaped pieces. So here's where I'm at. Ta-da! Right now, we just look like we've got a wooded mess. So I'm going to go ahead and start gluing these pieces down, and then I'm going to trim mine out. So you can see I've marked myself out a line to make sure that I get it fairly straight. I'm going to come in on my backer piece for a change and add my glue down. And then slide my piece in place. That way I don't have a lot of glue overage to have to cut through when I do get ready to trim out these edges. I am using regular Dollar Tree hot glue. I get asked a lot the kind of adhesives you want to use for this. I have found, yes, you can use other adhesives. Sometimes they do want to pose a problem. Hot glue tends to be the least amount of problems. Just be careful if you actually touch it to your foam part. Sometimes it can melt the actual foam edges. If you notice, I'm putting a little bit of gap in between these. I'm just a hair, nothing major. You can't even see the white backer showing through, but I don't know. I felt like I wanted the little bit of space in between it. So I'm making sure that when I add my glue, I'm getting it really good along those edges, because that's where you tend to, if you're going to have weak spots in your piece, or spots that tend to want to break down sooner, it tends to be, if you don't get it glued along those edges good, and those two pieces want to kind of flop together, you can end up with an unstable piece. So I'm going to continue to do this all the way down to the end of the piece. Here we go. My pieces are glued down. I want to show you guys this part really quick. If you wanted to do just an entirely rustic carrot, this still is super cute. You know, had I cut these just a little more even, and honestly being completely uneven like that, definitely has that kind of really rustic palette wood craft appeal to it. So you could totally go this way and not have to go this next step where I'm going to go and really trim this down. And I'm just going to do the same thing that I did before. I'm going to come around, and I'm trying to see what I'm doing here. It's such a weird angle. And I've hit some hot glue there. Good, got that up. So anytime you have a little bit of this hot glue overage seep out, it gives a little more effort in the cutting part. You can do it though. Looks like all three of these strips I went a little crazy with the hot glue. And this likely would have been easier had I just grabbed my ruler and done it the same way that I initiated with my carrot to begin with, and done that edge. Probably would make this so much simpler. So I'm going to do that very thing. I'm going to come in with my straight edge, get my little sticky dots to stick. Then everything else that I have to clean up from there, it will be pretty much minimal. A little more hot glue in place. Make sure I get that off. So now the trimming comes down to basically the same thing. Getting your rounded part freehand. I'm going to go ahead and do this, and then we get to decorate. Here comes the fun part. This is where I would actually tell you to go ahead and paint your edges the same way that I showed you to paint the edges a while ago. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try to work around it last. The reason I say go ahead and do it now is that if you do attach anything up here, it's a lot easier to do it now while there's nothing up there than it is after you get things attached. The reason I'm not going to, and I'll work around it later, is because it does take a little bit of time for that to dry, and I usually always get too impatient and I end up getting my paint on my ribbons. So I'm do as I'm suggesting and not as I'm actually doing. I've got some Dollar Tree options here. I think these are Dollar Tree. Pretty sure it's Dollar Tree, maybe Walmart. Those are the only two options that I pretty much choose from. So one of the other one, and knowing me, it's either the 96 or 97 cent Walmart ones or the Dollar Tree ones. Somebody tell me, do you remember if you guys have seen these fern looking things? So I've got those, and I also thought these could be fun too. These Dollar Tree, I don't know, I guess these are palm frond type pieces. I thought these are really large. They're a nice size for Dollar Tree pieces. Those could be super, super fun. These I really like, the full bushiness. And like I said, I cannot remember. I really want to say that this is Dollar Tree. So any of those, any of your greenery options, you're just going to want to attach it to the back. Now, I'm going to add ribbon to mine. I think I'm going to be using these fluffy ones, although I really don't hate this whole frond there looking one. That's just what I'm going to call it. So I think I'm going to add some buffalo check ribbon. I think this one's Dollar Tree also. Guys, you're going to find this humorous. I don't do a lot of shopping. Even Dollar Tree shopping, even craft shopping, I don't. I'm kind of a homebody. My husband does a lot of that. So when I end up with things, usually it's because he'll see something and be like, thought you might like this. What can you do with it? So he kind of pushes my creativity there quite a bit. I am just trying to gauge my size for my ribbon. That's going to be super cute. I think that may be where I go with mine. I am not doing a fancy smancy ribbon. This is a very thin ribbon, to be honest. It's wired, but it is very thin. It shapes up okay. So I'm going to kind of stick with the more of the fluff. I essentially just wrap that around. My cheat is I use just Dollar Tree zip ties. I can pop this on there. Slide it in place. If you haven't seen my little bow video, that's worth checking out because it can be some of the easiest bows that you've ever made. I'm going to grab it, all of it, pull it in half to make sure that I've got this thing in the center. Pop that sucker tight. Once I do that, I can sit and fluff this thing as the day is long. It's not going to break loose. If I try to use the chenille stems and stuff, I usually end up popping those loose. So this one, I can pull and tug and really shape this thing out. And not have to worry about it coming apart. The other cool thing is that with a lot of other methods, you have to notch that center. You know, cut the little notch in the center. With this method, you do not. Another quick tip is that when you go to cut zip ties, you know how sometimes that cut area can be super sharp when you cut it with the scissors? If you do it with nail clippers, you can get that thing completely flush, no sharp edges, no pointy pokey spots, anything like that. So that's my tip of the day. I'm just going to whip mine together. I really kind of wanted to get you to this part. I don't usually show a whole lot of the decorating things part because I feel like that's the part that we tend to want to customize and enjoy. But I will show you where I'm going with mine, which is pretty much this route. And I still keep leaning towards doing these guys as my topper. I don't know. We'll see when the final picture shows up. It'll be a surprise to both of us, but I hope you like the idea. I hope it gave you an idea on how to get a giant carrot shape without having to work too hard for it, to get the orange color without it being too crazy orange. This is all I got for you guys today. If you haven't done it already, guys, come join us on the Peppermint Cactus Facebook group. Come have some fun. See the projects over there. That's all I got for you. Have a great day, and I hope you get a chance to do a little crafting.